You can make a phenomenal game. And I've seen phenomenal games made, but you'll see them only make the one game and then the studio goes completely belly up and disappears. And I'm like, well, wait a second. If they made a phenomenal game, then what was the other piece that they were missing? What was the thing that nobody was talking about on why this company completely disappeared? What was that other piece of the puzzle? That's why I wanted to bring you on, and why in general I want to bring more voices of people on the other side of the fence, because nobody talks about it, but it's so important. It's not just making a great game, it's also a business.
I really appreciate having someone that is genuinely interested to see what is behind the curtain and not only discussing just about, oh, there is this game to be released or this game. But the real question for me is, how do you make a game? How do you make a game successful? And to make a game successful is, yes, we can discuss about game design. We can discuss about art. We can discuss about engineering, of course. So there are very important piece of the puzzle. And I will say they are the emerging part of the iceberg. But then there is everything that is beneath. There is something that we cannot see.
There's a lot of game dev conversations out there in YouTube and just in general in conversations about game design, how to build a game, how to make your game and things like that. But that's only like one piece of the puzzle.
Myself, this is what I have done for more than 25 years. So it looks natural to me, and when I decided to create my company, Ace Consulting Group, I said, okay, what is missing right now in this industry? And something that I was always reflecting about it is what should we bring that people do not talk about, or where I would say, where is my forte, or that where I can really improve the company, top output, results. And I said, okay, I have the chance to have worked with all the different departments and divisions and to have a look that is very holistic. And this is when you understand that you run a company, you run a business, and you just do not run just a small team making one game. That's very, very different, I would say, in terms of mindset. Myself, I have helped more right now than 30 companies. Most of the companies that I have worked with, I would say, either they are companies who are starting, and the startup, they are facing some difficulties, or there are companies who are starting themselves and they say, oh, we need to have someone to help us, either to scale, or it can be to raise, or to better manage, or to find some solution. And this is really what they are trying to find, but there is no way in this industry to get it. One of the questions is why there is no one talking about the business, and why there is really no one that is managing this part of the ecosystem. I will say that mainly because people maybe believe that this is a little bit boring as a subject. Most of the people that we can deal with, definitely, they are either programmer, game designer, or engineer. These people love the game. They are in the game industry, I would say, as it's a bad joke, but as the love of the game is what makes them come and stick to it. Even if they are suffering, even if their game is not doing well, even if their startup is going bankrupt, they will create another one, and they will create another one, and again and again and again. And for me, one of the things that was really, that has a heavy weight on the game industry or the ecosystem is the lack of maturity. This is something that, of course, you have many founders, many CEOs that are very young, they are creating their first company, or they take things like almost like a hobby. I was a child, I was playing game, and now I have created this startup with 2 or 3 friends, and now we want to release a game. And I am so lucky to have my passion becoming my work, and my work is my hobby, and everything is mixed like that. The problem is building that, I will say, compared to what you were mentioning before, most of the people that's until a certain level, of course, we are dealing with, they are building studios. And I think that if you are a founder or if you are a CEO or a COO of one of the startup, you should not say that only that I have a studio. You should say I have a company, I have a business. Because as soon as you understand that you run a company, you understand that you are in something that is pretty serious, that you have some people around you, you have the responsibility of the people you are recruiting. And if it's not going well, you may have to fire them, to let them go. You can lose your game. Many people have invested a lot of their time, of their energy. Some people are putting their own money because sometimes the companies, they are asking other people to put their own money into it. So this is always a kind of a very funny game until it's not anymore. And for me, the real idea was to try to bring a maturity to the game industry, especially, I would say, we can say that startup or startuppers in the game industry with small studios is a niche, but this is a pretty big niche. You know, if you are considering that you have 18,000 new games a year on Steam, where does that leave you? You have each year passing by, you have less chance to succeed. And that's exactly the same. You are trying to go to console, you are competing with the big one. And if you are a small fish, how do you do that? How do you understand that it's not only making a beautiful game or you have a nice idea, that it will transform itself into a big success? And definitely not the right way to manage a business and to manage a company. I think is to rely only on your hobby, on your passion, or on one or two ideas of making a game. So that would be the main reason why myself, I started to do that. And I really want to use my 25 years of experience, bring that to the CEOs and to the founders, so I can bring them the maturity that maybe they are lacking, but also the clarity, the decision making that they have to do, and also to reflect on what they are doing. There is nothing more dangerous than to have a guy who is, let's say, talented. He has raised $1, $2, $5, $10 million. And he says, because I have raised money, I am the king of the world. And now no one can tell me exactly. Yes, you know the drill. And no one can tell me anything because I am the CEO of my company. So I don't owe anyone anything, of course, except the people that you got money from. But these people at the beginning, they set you free. But then after, when they see that there is nothing coming months after months, or you are very late, or you are starting to say there is less cash, the runway is too high, or we will be very late in the release of the game or anything like that, or the DLC, then could you help me to raise more money? Could you bring me, I don't know, $1 or $2 extra million, something like that? And this is where the fight is starting, where all your big dream can die in an instant. And I know because I linked it with some companies I was working for. And that's why I'm saying it's funny until it's not funny. So myself, I'm always preparing myself, not as the consultant guy that, oh, I will ask Alexis, what do you think of this? And that's it. But I largely prefer work far in advance, if possible, before the issues are raised, before all the trouble arrives. And it's far easier to build something that is very well made with the strong foundation than to build a company with the wrong foundation. And then everything is becoming a mess, and more you are trying to scale. We will discuss about that later on. More you are trying to scale, more it's becoming a kind of chaos. Of course, we'll say organized chaos, because you give the feeling that you know what you are doing, but at the end, it's just a pure chaos with action going in all departments. Nothing is aligned. And at the end, there would be no output from it. And that's the main issue for me.
I mean, I love that you're touching on maturity, because I think there wasn't a way that I was able to describe a lot of what I was also witnessing. And I think maturity is the perfect word for it. And what it is, or what is perceived, and what I see, specifically more so, I think, in the indie studio, but actually I don't know much about the double and triple A.
Uh,
I mean, we'll definitely talk about that. Maybe there's a lot of immaturity there as well, but I think that's the perfect word for it. And it's interesting, like I said, nobody, or I haven't said this, but what I'm saying is, like, there's not a lot of business people that come into the game industry and it's like, I'm going to make a game studio. It's not like their first instinct. It's usually, we'll go into finance, or, be a COO or some other company that's already well established or something like that. But it's common for artists to say, I'm going to make a game studio. But there's such that level of that huge level of knowledge that is just so lacking, which is like, okay, well, how do you organize this? What's the goal? Where are you trying to go with it? And I think it's interesting that you prefer to come in, which makes sense, come in, build the foundation. But one of the things I think, as just a human, on a human level,
Yeah.
our greatest level of learning is from failure. I think
Yeah.
it's the best way to learn, but it's also like, I think how am I trying to square this a little bit? Where do you balance someone learning from failure and, like, okay, I want them to learn from this experience so that way they can understand why I was trying to tell them something, compared to directly saying, okay, let's do it this way because I know best. Like, how do you square that between somebody that's like, well, I think this is the way, and you kind of have that conflict between them? Because if someone wants to go in a specific direction, I might be over explaining it and you probably already get it, but someone wants to go in a specific direction, a founder, a CEO, and you're like, do you let them go in that direction knowing that that's the potential failure, but you know that they need to learn that lesson? Or do you try to set them on the right course and say, I think we should go this way because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you can go down the alphabet at that point. How do you square those two options?
Most of the people who are contacting me are already more or less experiencing some trouble. So I have dealt with so many different types of CEOs and founders of studios. The one attracted by the shiny objects, and I think this one, you got it. And the one who cannot keep up with the roadmap is basically, it's the opposite way around. It's the roadmap that should try to keep up with the founder and the CEO. So it's always pushed back until there is no more money and the game will never be released. And, you have, is for one game that is released, usually what I'm saying is that a game that is released is the tree that is hiding the forest on the back, the dead forest, with thousands of games that have never been released. And I have some friends of mine, they have worked for multiple studios, small one, medium size, large size. And for 6 or 7 years, they were game designer engineers. Maybe they have worked for 4 or 5 different games projects. They have never seen their game released. It goes from the small to the big one. So, okay, let's imagine that your career is from 20 to, let's be generous, 70 years old because you love it. You have 50 years and you are taking, maybe for some people, 1/7 or, 1/5 of your career on some project that will never exist, that will never be released, that will be dead. And that's one of the issue also. And then you have all the people who are, what I see the most is the studio manager who are so delusional that they believe that they can take the big ones, that they believe also that they have a game in mind, the game that they have shaped in their mind. They believe it will be released exactly that way, but this is their first game. They have $1 or $2 or $3 million. And instead of being very reasonable with your first game, what they do, they dream so big that they are consumed by their own dream. And when they realize that to complete their dream, they have done only 30%, they are kind of blocked in a situation. Either the studio dies because there is no more funds, because the game is not ready to be released, or they will cut the game and it will become an open beta on Steam, one of the many. And it will never be released in the complete form. Steam is full of open beta games. Or they will just decide to go bankrupt, showing also that it was never for not so much about the love of the game itself, but much more to be a little bit the CEO of their own kingdom, because they praise that to others. I'm the CEO, I am the founder, I have my own studios. And then after they close it, they will raise money, they will create another studios. And here it goes again and again and again. And that's the problem. That's the maturity that is not coming. You have so many people who are, I would say, self-centric persons that they are ready to consume, to burn the old studios that they have built just for their vision. And because it's a kind of taboo, because they will say, I have the vision, I have this dream, and I will compete with the biggest one and blah, blah, and I have a genius in some ways, that they will make everyone work like crazy. The project will not be released. Everyone will be fired. And what was a very fun day at work, after a few months or few years, it would become a nightmare to manage with the bankruptcy of the company. And this is something that is extremely, extremely frequent. And that's the problem, because they believe that because they have money, they don't need maturity. Why would you need? I have enough money to toy around with this money. No, that's the thing.
You spoke into goals, and I think goals is probably one of the most undervalued things that I see, especially within the games. As I enter into the games, I'm recently relatively new to the game industry. I've been in business much longer than I've been in the games industry, building my own studio. I just more or less hated what I was doing before. So I wanted to do something that I actually enjoyed doing. But I've been in the business, and one of the things is, like, if you don't set a clear goal and expectations and milestones and where you're going to achieve. I used to do IT work. And so, like, when I would go into an area and then when a network built, I had to give very specific on when and where things are going to be placed, when things are going to be turned on, how things are going to be turned on, when people can use these things. And if I wasn't almost 100% right on how that was going to be implemented, the business then would have to figure out when they would be able to be operational, because they're counting on when they're going to be able to actually receive customers and things like that. And so one of the things that I've noticed is goals, is a lack of goal setting and sticking to those goals. Like, what is your ultimate, what is your north? Like, recently I was working with, it's funny what you're saying, like friends, and I was trying to pull this out. What's the North Star? What's the thing we're trying to achieve? What do we want to be? What do we want to achieve? And anything and any decision we make should represent what we're trying to achieve. What's that ultimate goal? How often? And if you can give me some specific examples of possibly the lack of goal setting and the importance of goal setting. Like, we want to make a game in X amount of time, and sticking true to that, and then giving the reason, like, why do we want to make that game in that amount of time? Because what we'll learn when we actually release it will be more important than spending 4 or 5 years on a game that never gets released. And so anyway, I want you to kind of speak into some specifics on bad goal setting, lack of goal setting, and why goal setting is so important on actually achieving, actually getting what you want to get done.
It's a pretty long question. Is coming back to the due diligence, is what kind of games are you trying to make? For which market? What are you trying to nail? And that's extremely difficult because most of the people want to create the game of their dream, or they believe that they are fundamentally a very good idea that can change the market, or that they can really succeed in the market. Of course it exists. But the problem is that everyone is looking at the success and no one is looking at the failures. I look, for example, on LinkedIn. Everyone is always talking about, I am so happy I'm moving to this company. I am so happy because my game is released. I am so happy to join this team, etc., etc. No one is saying, I am so unhappy to have worked with these guys who are incompetent, who are not professional, to have worked in such a toxic environment, etc., etc. Right? And that's true. That's true because everyone is talking about it within the studios, but no one is saying nothing. It's because just people want to keep their job, want to keep their pay, etc., etc. So most of the time, what you will see is that CEOs and founders will start by saying, let's do this game in about, let's say, if it is mobile, 18 months to 2 years. And if it is a PC game, let's consider it's a 2 years time. And then after, if it is a console and you need to work more, you need to get the dev kits and etc., etc. Let's say between 2 to 3 years time to develop, considering that. So you are not really starting about to discuss about what is your team, how do you scale it. You are not talking about how much money you have in bank or how can you raise money. You are never talking about this question. You are basically discussing based on the information that you have on the market. You say, okay, this game looks pretty much the one that we want to build. And it took 2 years. Yeah, but it took 2 years. What exactly what is your structure? Again, you come back to the structures. You have a company who can make a game with 100 people for 2 years in a 2 years time. And another company can make a game in 2 years time with just one guy as a studio. Let's say, for example, you have a game like Stardew Valley. The guy can work 2 years or 3 years or 5 years alone in his bedroom and make this game. But you have other company who can make a game with 100 people in the same amount of time. So who is right, who is not right? And this is where you are really entering something much deeper is, okay, the game that you are trying to do, how much money are you putting into it? I would say that's one of the biggest question is what will be your runway, your runway rates, how much money you will spend per month. But then after myself, I really like to work I've always liked to work in a retro planning kind of mode. You start by the end, you come back to the beginning. And that's something that is very important is when do you want to get your beta? When do you want to get your alpha, your pre-alpha stage? When do you want to get, like, let's say, for example, your engine or at least your first prototype, these kind of things. And then after, you need to understand that the structure needs to reflect I would say the condition where you are. You do not need to have 100 people when you are working on a prototype. That's absolutely not true. You are supposed to increase the size of the team little by little if the prototype is approved. And prototyping is extremely important because you can decide if you want to kill this game or if you want to continue, at what stage. And if you are too far advanced, then you have a problem because you will never be able to kill your own product. That's impossible. And if you do that, you will make the same mistake. I was talking about the shiny object effect. You will say, okay, let's kill this one. Let's do something different. But then you will apply exactly the same mindset. So you should start from the end. You should know exactly by the end how many people you will need. And then after you come back to the prototype stage, how many people do you need? Second thing is very important to keep your company as lean as possible. I know that people are dreaming to have everything from the start. Let's have, let's say, a very big office. Let's buy everything, and we need to enjoy, and we need to have all the best tools and softwares and everything. But no one is starting to spend a lot and succeed at the end. You have some companies who can do better because they are financially safe. That's something that can happen, but that's not the majority of the people who are making game. Most of the time is starting with friends. It can be start by the side project, or let's do it because we lost our job or anything. There is a good result. So what kind of games are we making? Okay, so what is the game that we like? And then people consider about that. It's a very, very complicated because the people do not look at the stage of the company. And it's not the same when you are building at the beginning, the foundation. You do not need to have a lot of people, but you need to start to have a very clear structure with the roles, responsibilities, who is in charge of what. That's something that is extremely important.
I think it's funny that you said like you start at the end, because it's true. And it's ironic enough. Are you familiar with The American Office by chance? The show, The Office, the American version?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, ironically enough, I have my Michael Scott Paper Company mug, but there's a really funny bit in that episode when the company's going completely bankrupt, and Michael Scott walks into the room and he's just like, okay, day 45, company saved. Day 39, what's next? And it's so simple and so stupid at the same time, but in a way, it's true. Like, what do you want the outcome to be, and when do you want that outcome to happen? And that's the point of what I guess the synthesis of what you're saying is like, if you want the game to be out and be successful, okay, when is that going to happen? So that's day 45. Day 45, the game's out, it's successful, and you've made this much money. Okay, what does the day before look like? What does the day before that look like? What does the day before that look? You know what I mean? And you play that scenario out. So that way you can actually measure, okay, am I on track to actually achieve that thing that I set out to achieve? And so, like I said, in a really silly and stupid way, like in Michael Scott, like day 40 to 45, company saved. Day 44, go. It's just like, yeah, I mean, it's really like that simple in a way of like conceptualizing. One of the things too that you kind of touched on a little bit, which is like runway and things like that. And this idea of if your goal is to make a studio, like we have the Stardew Valleys or the guys making it in his room forever, but it's like that still has an intrinsic cost. He still put hours, time, and energy into making that game. So to say, some people be like, oh, well, he just made it himself. I'm like, but yeah, he also put hours into it. So if you were to try and replicate that and you don't have the skills that he has, you would need to hire that person. What would that number be? What would that look like to hire that person to make some sort of replicative version of it? And so I think that's also a part of it too, is like people don't anticipate like, oh, well, that person just made it by himself in that thing. It's like, yeah, but he has a plethora of skills and he spent an exuberant amount of time, and that actually has a quantity number, a value of what that actually looks like if you were to try and replicate that with those limited skills. There's one of the things that, sorry, when you see me looking down, I'm actually just writing things down because I don't want to interrupt you. Yeah. So I'm like, oh shoot, I want to ask him something there. So, but I love, another thing that you just touched on, which is like people build what they want, their dream, or they set sail for their dream. They don't set sail for their capabilities and what they're able to actually achieve. And so if you're a one-person shop and you're like, I want to make a massive multiplayer MMO, and it's going to take me 3 years. It's like, no, it's not. And you shouldn't build that. You're one person, and and especially if you've never put a game out, what you should do is make something that you can make a small game and put it out there. You will learn and do it quickly. I'm a believer of failing fast. If you're going to fail, do it very quickly. Put it out there and fail really fast, because then you'll be able to learn from those failures really quick. Don't spend 10 years to fail at something. Spend 6 months to fail at something.
Many people are missing, they are looking at this one situation and currently, instantly. And they are not looking what was happening. You take, for example, Rockstar games. Everyone, at least at a certain age, we remember when GTA 3 was released, how it was gigantic, how we have never seen something like that. You have the freedom to roam into the street, to do whatever you want. You can steal a car. You can do absolutely everything. This sense of freedom was something that we have never seen before. And everyone is considering, wow, GTA is fantastic. GTA is genius. And it is. But everyone forget that there is a 3. And no one, or so few people, has played GTA and GTA 2. And it was exactly the same game design. It was exactly the same game design, but the game design was just a view from above. It was 2D. It was so simple. They started very small with a 2D game, and then they changed the 2D into 3D and make it something that feels and look alive. This is what they have done, but no one has started exactly, from very big. It's very rare. And people who are trying too hard, it can happen if you are veteran of the industry. I will put that aside because that's not what most of the games you can see on Steam are made with. Most of the people, they have an idea. They want to make a game, but they don't really want to listen. They don't understand what it takes to create a game. It's not about because you have something like an alpha stage that you have a game. You are pretty far from it. It takes a lot of work. You're right. It takes so much. And some of my friends, ex-colleagues, they have created their own studios. And one of these guys, he was created a mobile game that was so good, he has done it by himself. And you're right. What no one has seen, I really like his game. And he loves he has a very strong passion for cars. He was creating a game with kind of a manufacturing of cars. And he was working like crazy by himself. He was a game designer, but he has learned to code. He has learned to do the art. It was pixel art. Fantastic game. And honestly, that was incredible. He has done it by himself, but he was telling me he was working like maybe 16 hours, 18 hours. And then after the success came with this simple game, he decided to create a studios and to recruit some people. And he started to recruit 1, then 2, then 3, and progressively he was growing and growing and growing his studio. But he didn't start it with 100 people right away. He started by himself in his bedroom. And that should be the way. So people were coming and say, I'm the boss, you execute and you do this. They can be delusional or lunatics or the way that you want to frame it. But they just want to push some ideas to others, not considering what matters, especially if you have some teams, is the structure, is how to protect your team. And you protect your team if you make your game to be released. That's something that is so important. That is something that is so important. You know that there is sometimes you have a sad reality is many people do not want to release their games because if the game is released, that means it's out, and if it sells, that means that you will never be backed up anymore by VCs or investors. So it's far better to ask to your investors every 6 months or every year, can I get 1, 2, or 3 extra million to make the studio survive because we are really building something great. So let's continue for another year and then another year and then another year, because releasing the game is just exposing what you have not done or what you have done wrong. And that's the problem. Is that would be the moment of truth.
Who are these investors that just go, okay, writing a check for a couple $1,000,000 and say, go ahead, keep making it. I mean, because in my, just from my experience and just generally in business, it's very much like, what have you done? How have you gotten there? What is the plan to get finished? When do I expect to get my money back? How long is it going to take for you to finish this? Like, I mean, you've got to be a professional at literally getting people to write you checks. Like, I feel like that is what you're good at. If that's because, man, and I was gonna ask you something like, what, when you go and work with somebody, how can you tell the difference between a real leader and somebody who's just like, this guy's not got it. He doesn't have it. He's definitely not leading this team. This team is just off the rails doing whatever they want. What is the key difference between a real leader and somebody that's not really leading the show?
You can have some leaders who are very, introspective, who are just like the engineer, and some people who are just coding the game and who are just designing the game and, very silent, and they are just working all days. And this is what they are doing. And their dream is to build by themselves. And that's pretty much okay. They are not considering themselves as leader. They are just doing what they are supposed to do to make the game or the project to be successful. When myself, I was working in Blizzard, when Blizzard started, they started with minor games. I mean, more simple game than what they are doing right now, because this is just such a small team, but they were just doers. Everyone was working on making the game. So I would say that I would not consider that they were a leader by themselves, not considering themselves as a leader, but just people who love games and they work on making the games. And maybe that's one of the foundation of making a great leader, is to have started for something very small, and they walk through their life to make their success. And they never consider that everything is granted for them. It's just like working day after day. And on the opposite, when you have someone who has accomplished nothing, but who is bragging about his ID, an ID is nothing. It's an ID on the market is something, it's called a product. An ID that is in your mind is just nothing. It doesn't exist. It's just something that fantasy that you have in your mind. And if these people are bragging, oh, I am the CEO, I am the boss of this company, or blah blah blah. Usually, it's I would say it's the start of, not completely a red flag, but at least it's showing that the person is much into himself or herself than into the game or than into the company. Because the only way that you can see if someone is good is by they are showing, I would say, their values and their morality on the day-to-day job. I have seen so many guys who are CEOs or founders. They are CEO, but because they are founders of their own studios, but they are smashed. They go at night and they have fun and they drink and drink and drink and drink or something like that. Then they count on their team to work on the next day, and they will show up at 2 p.m., in the afternoon or something like that. That's showing that you have no ethics, no work ethics. And this is definitely a red flag. And because myself, I was working in Japan for such a very long time. In Japan, there is the respect for the boss who is working. That's why you will have the open space, and the boss is doing his job. And the beauty of the open space, in a way, is that the boss is looking at what this team are doing, but the teams can see if the boss is there. if he's really showing, if he has his the real ethics and not going to the golf or, just not showing for 6 hours out of the 8 and just, 2 hours to do the check on the team or something like that. This is bad values, bad morality, bad ethics, bad work ethic. And that's something, this is definitely a red flag. If you have someone with so much into his game that is coming, that is invested into his company fully, then that's, for me, that's kind of showing the leadership. You will be respected by your team. You are respected by your team because you are respecting your team. It works both ways. You are losing you are losing the respect of your team as soon as you are not showing up, or you are not doing what you are asking others to do.
I 100% agree to that. There's a book I recently read. I'm not sure if you know of. It's called Ego is the Enemy.
No, yeah,
And
I know the book. Yeah.
I must have been more egotistical than I thought I was, because it was probably one of the more frustrating books I've ever read in my life. As I was reading, I was like, son of a bitch. Like, it just was, but the theme of it, I mean, the theme of it is so true. It's literally put your head down, do the work, stop talking about it. Like, that's like the whole thing. And ego tells you, like, oh, you're this great, wonderful thing. Like, keep talking about it. Keep being this, flamboyant and getting out. And it's like, no, put your head down and get the work done. And it's so true, because you see those images of, like, it's like silly images of, like, leaders, and they'll like bad leaders versus good leaders. And, like, the good leaders are like the ones also behind with the guys pushing the thing up as well. And the bad leaders are like the ones on top of the rock and just like, go. And it's like, yeah, you got to be in it with people. You got to be in the trenches taking grenades with your team. And you got to be in there just getting the work done, because especially, and that's everything for me always falls back with goals. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Because no one's going to achieve it for you. No one's going to do it for you, no matter how big or successful or how great your team is, no matter how capable your team is. If you're not there every day, putting the hours in, no one's going to do it for you. And they're not going to get your goals done for you. You got to be the one taking the grenades. And you got to be the one also. I love that, what you said, protecting your team. I believe that. I truly believe that. Like, you got to protect your team. Your team isn't there to serve you. You're there to serve your team. That's the way I believe.
Absolutely. This is good leadership and this is good management. Ultimately, a manager is someone who is here to make his team succeed. That's the way that it should be looked at. Sure, you have different kind of organization. I have known myself the organization which will be a top-down type of organization, where you have a guy with almost, I would say, like a tyrant, who is saying to others, you need to do this, like this. And then you can have, usually it goes to micromanagement, because there is no trust to his team, because the guy is afraid himself. Whereas you will have other companies completely different. They are working bottom up. The reality of management is you should never work against the people. You should work with the people. You work with teams, and you need to collaborate. And if you look, for example, the companies are very good, are very strong to frame something in a way, the way it arranged them. Remember when there was the COVID, and suddenly everyone could develop from simple game that was made by one guy, of course, to AAA titles, like the big one, like Assassin's Creed, etc., FIFA, etc. Everyone could work from home suddenly. It was not possible before, but suddenly we could make it. We could make it happen. That's strange, right? And then after 5 years, here we are, and all these companies are asking people to come back to work. There is the remote option is less and less done. So it's pushing back to what it was really in the first place: control, like bad management, micromanagement. And usually the guys who are saying that are the guys who are even not showing in the office. So they will ask everyone to be there, let's say from 9 to 5. But then, of course, you know that you will have the crunch time and et cetera, et cetera. But themselves, they are not showing. And they are asking everyone to work in the office. Of course, there is a very strong point in working in the office, definitely. But it's always very funny to see the people who are, I would say, who are explaining why the company is working in a certain way to give some rationality, but the rationality is changing depending, I don't know, it can be their mood, it can be the investors, it can be because of the COVID or anything. You can always make everything rational at the end of the day. Everything is possible. And this is exactly what they are doing. So this is not a good management, and they are not very diligent with the team because they are not taking the time to explain, or they are not trying to organize things the way that people will understand, oh, this is in our best interest. It's just, you come to the office, you do this, and there is absolutely no negotiation. That's not the point. The point is to raise awareness towards the team why they should work in the office. That should be the most important.
It always comes back to why, it's no one wants to have a directive. They want to know why to do something. And if the why to come back to the office is because your output of collaboration was 10 times better versus when we all went remote, it'd be like, our products are 10 times better when we're all in the same office. And here's the data and reason why, and here's the data. And this is why we want to come back in the office. That's a much more compelling reason than just saying, hey, we all need to come to the office because I told you so. Like, that's like, oh, well, oh yeah, of course. Like, we're making a very collaborative, creative, game or, piece of media. Obviously, yeah, I guess we were better in the office. It's a much easier pill to swallow at that point.
Just one thing about that is what needs to be understood is that most of the time, the companies, they do not have an execution problem. They have a structural and a clarity problem. Is people do not know what they are doing anymore. This is something that is always coming back to the discussion when you are on the floor, with the rest of the teams, that why the management is taking the decision, why we are changing the business model. We were not informed about this or that. We have today an extremely, I think, an extremely good example with what has been happening for example, in Ubisoft in the past 5-10 years. And probably this is something that will become almost, I would say, a masterclass of what you are supposed not to do in terms of management, in terms of clarity, in terms of responsibility towards your investors, towards your customers, towards the gamers, towards your teams. Is almost everything that should not have been done has been done. That's extremely impressive. And today you are in this scenario where you have cut from all the different studios. You have a lot of politics, but at the end, who is in charge? The CEO, right? So the CEO has a problem. Does he want to fix the issue or not? And I think that if the CEO is playing some kind of political game, or if the CEO is trying to hide some facts, or is not clear, or is like, let's put it that way. If the CEO of the game company is a little bit far away from the reality of the studio, he will fail. And I do not mean that he has to be a gamer. I do not mean that. I need that the guy has to be genuinely interested into what's happening in the studios, the games, to look at the games and everything. You can see, for example, Ubisoft, they do not have an execution problem because they are releasing the game. And of course, it's a very, very big machine. But they have a structural and they have a clarity issue. Why? Because they had until recently 20,000 people. Most of the game companies creating AAA titles have maybe that 1/3. So that means, yes, they can create, but at what cost? So they are absolutely not profitable. Second thing is that they have a clarity problem because they have lost, they have kind of, I would say even stronger than that. In my opinion, they have betrayed their own customers. They have alienated their own customer. I know because I was one of them, and I was so disappointed by all the recent years' decision or the way of doing their games or what they were showing. Is that's very sad in that sense. They completely lost it. They completely lost it. It's almost like they have forgot, considering there is 20,000 people and they can have all the market research and everything. They have lost what is the fundamentals of the company. Who are they serving? What kind of game they are supposed to do? What people want to play. And that's something that is extremely important. Again, you do not have to be a gamer. I think that Tech2 is a company that is extremely well managed. But look at it. There is the sense of freedom from the team to excel in what they are doing. Either it is NBA, either it's a Rockstar with Red Dead Redemption that took 8 years to develop, or GTA 6 is more than 10 years right now, because GTA 5 is the only game that went from PS3 to PS4 to PS5 so far.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it
It's
will be
crazy.
released also on PS6 in one way
I'm
or
sure it
another.
will. I'm sure it will.
And they can do that because they have the freedom to do it. I think it was recently we had the game called Expedition 33 that was released, and that was the game that has received the most awards. Like during the Game Year award, I think they received 9, if I'm correct. So it's really a masterpiece. And what this guy wanted to do, they loved the Final Fantasy. They wanted to make their own Final Fantasy. So they are French. They could have been American, whatever. They just wanted to make this game. But the very good and interesting discussion about it is everyone was saying instantly, this game would not have been possible in that Ubisoft. And they have more money. They make this game with $10 million, whereas Ubisoft is making more than 2 billion euros. So it's not a question of money. It's not a question of size of the team. It was really the freedom to do what they wanted to do. That's it. And of course, these guys were working as a producer in Ubisoft, but they were experienced. They had the maturity to know exactly what they wanted to do and how they should do it. And they started with a very, very small team. And I think up to the end, at the end, they were maybe like max 20 to 30 people at the very end. So that's extremely impressive. And I think they almost kind of rock, the conception of the way that we make games with teams, because they are so dedicated. But it was not possible in Ubisoft just because they are playing politics, just because they are not managing people to create games. They are managing egos of people. And then after, when there is an issue, let's say latest Assassin's Creed, then you fire the guy who was in charge of Assassin's Creed. And you say, you were doing something wrong with the license, like with the franchise. You were very disappointing to us. Okay, so the guy is leaving, but there is 20,000 people. The game is taking 3 years to 5 years to develop, and no one was telling him before. No one was discussing about that. So, of course, that's also proving something. When you are throwing people under the bus, that's showing that the toxicity is to the max.
There's no way there weren't signs before the feedback. It's obviously a structural problem with Ubisoft, and they're finding out. They're having to figure out their entire business. And I think you spoke into one thing which was this is how do I phrase this? You said they don't necessarily, the CEO founder doesn't necessarily need to be a gamer, but I do think that they necessarily need to be a consumer of their own product. Like you almost have to know, is this something that I believe in? Is this something that I want to consume? Is this something that I want to be a part of? I think of like let's just take an absurd example. Um, Recently, we have a company called Cracker Barrel here in the United States, and it's just a restaurant. And recently, they did an entire rebrand of the company logo and also the aesthetic visually inside. And the CEO got absolutely flamed and back, like just completely. Everyone hated it. They got completely flamed on it online. Everyone hated. And I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, and you saw the CEO. I'm like, this is somebody who has probably never eaten in a Cracker Barrel. She has no interest of ever eating in a Cracker Barrel. And she made decisions because she fundamentally has no idea who her customers are. And so she made these decisions off of theory of what she would want to have a Cracker Barrel. But I'm like, but you don't understand, your entire customer base is not what you decided to design. And so where I'm going with that is like, if you fundamentally don't know who your customer is and you try to make changes that fundamentally go against who your customer or your market is, what do you expect to have happen? Of course, people aren't going to receive what you think that they should have. You don't put your own personal deep belief on what you think something should be. You should be, this is who our customer base is. Don't betray them. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts when it also comes, like you and I are both comic book people. So I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to the comic book world as well in that same department. And as a person who loves comic books, especially the earlier stuff, not necessarily the recent stuff, is I feel like they fundamentally betrayed me on the things that I enjoyed. They looked at who I was as a consumer of their product and said, we don't want you anymore. We don't want you. We don't want your money. We don't want the things that you enjoy about comic books. We want to create this new version of what we think you should like. And I was like, well, but that's not what I like. That's not the things that I enjoy about comic books. And I don't want you to change the things that I like. And I was your biggest supporter, and I'm the one who spent money on your products. And now I don't spend money on your products. And so I think just speaking into like where Ubisoft's direction has gone, I think they fundamentally betrayed their audience. And I think that's where the big, shift happened with Ubisoft. And it's a tale as old as time, almost, is what it feels like. Once you get big enough, all of a sudden these companies decide to just, I don't know, get too big and you make really poor decisions.
You're right. Myself, I was buying all the Assassin's Creed. I was finishing all of them. And why? Because just the idea was fantastic to me. Of course, the way that it was done, the story, I would say the charisma of the character, like Ezio. That's just one example. Everything, but also the other reason is myself, I love history, with a big H capital letter. And this is what I love. And I had the perfect mix of having the feeling that I was learning something, but learning something by being in it. And it was something that was fantastic to me, and that was very unique. And I really love it. And there was also this kind of meta story between actual time and when you go back to the past and everything, and this makes everything, the lore has been completely destroyed. And then after, when you understand that, well, suddenly I think it was in Vanilla, they started to make, you can buy some pink unicorn, and then you can fly, and it's like, what are you doing, guys? This is where you know that there is no one in charge of the company anymore, except a few minority people deciding for all the other guys and pushing the direction that they want. So for me, of course, the CEO is in charge. So he has the responsibility 100%. because that's his company and the one that is in charge. But everyone knew that the problem of Ubisoft was publishing team. It's exactly the same for me when I was playing long time ago. I started with the first version of Ghost Recon or Rainbow Six. That was so great. Now when I look at it, is that no, is it doesn't correspond to me, and I really like and I really appreciate the fact that you are coming back to our second passion, which is about comics, because yes, that's a pure betrayal. And, that's why myself, I- except Batman, I was collecting the single issue for the art, the art cover. But otherwise, I'm buying omnibuses because with omnibus, I collect the past, and something that was good will always be good. And today, you can really understand about that. For example, is there the equivalent of a new Watchmen? Is there, that this year they are pushing like crazy promotion about the 40 years anniversary of Dark Knight Returns. And they are talking about it. Why? Because of course, this is a legendary comic as a graphic novel. It changed the industry, same as with Watchmen, basically around the same time. And you had the Batman year one, and all these comics were absolutely outstanding. And that was the same with Marvel, etc. But today is like, oh my God, what I am reading. Sometimes you turn the pages and say, what is this thing? So that's the problem. They are not respecting their audience. Marvel was also suffering from it. After Endgame, everyone is waiting for Doctor Doom to come. And isn't it something that the only way to bring back the success of Marvel is to bring back all the actors that were dead or that couldn't be coming back? So that's completely crazy.
This could be, you and I could have an entire separate podcast on literally comic books and all of that. I guarantee it. Because I think the best way to say it, to summarize, is betrayal. It feels like betrayal. You betrayed the people that actually supported you, is what it feels like. And I think that goes all the way back to game design and being a CEO, being a founder, being someone that's creating something. Do not betray the people that are giving you money. Do not betray them, because if you do, you lose all your money. The people that support you are the ones that you should continue to feed. Those are the ones that were there, that were from the beginning. They support you. And look at the market. Who do you want to make games for? Who do you want to create for? And don't betray them, because we will stop buying. We will stop. And I think AAA is experiencing that heavily right now. People just stop buying their products. You upped it another $10. Now it's $80 a video game, and you give us a subpar product. And moving all the way back, and there's a question I wanted to try and bring it back to CEO, because like I said, you and I could probably go on a tangent with comic books and go absolutely crazy with that.
During the time that you are thinking about it, I think it was 2 years ago during the Game Awards. There was the boss of Lion Studios. They were doing that. They received best game of the year. They were the goalie for Baldur's Gate 3. And I think it was Sven Zinke, I think. I'm not sure I pronounced correctly, but the boss of the studio. And he was saying, it's not that complicated. You need to respect your audience, to respect your team, to trust your team to make the best game ever. And you should just consider that. We were derailing a little bit because we were discussing about comic books because we love that and etc. But that's the same for the game. What are these industries? They are industries that are based on passion. The passion of people that were especially raised by this product, raised by either comics or games, or it can be music also. It's always this kind of very strong passion. And we were raised by it, right? And now we have to do exactly what we wanted to do when we were kids. So when we were kids, there was no politics. There was no politics. There was nothing like that. There was no ego. There was just enjoying a game. And now when you build a game, you need to enjoy the game that you are building. That's one of the first things. Don't try when you are an indie. Don't try to please people because already you are in the indie scene. You are not in a triple A. Make the game that you want to make. Then after, if people ask me, yeah, but I just have 3 million, but I want to do, let's say, a Final Fantasy game, look like, something like that. Okay, in that case, you have to reduce the scope. That's the way that you do it. Do something that is proper. You do not need to make a game because, let's say, FF7 was, I don't know, 70 hours gameplay. You don't need to make a 70 hours gameplay. You don't need to make an RPG that is so big that you are losing your mind into it and you are playing for 6 months. You don't need to build a gigantic GTA from scratch. What you want to do is maybe you can have a very good experience of game with your 3 million, but you are just have, let's say, 5 hours, 8 hours, a 10 hours game. That's it. But it's when you master what you are doing, you control the narratives. That's why you have many games on Steam, the very good games that are just 2 hours of game. And that's completely fine. You don't need to sell all the game 50, 70, 80 bucks. You don't need to do that. You don't need to have a game that is playing more than 100 hours. Who is stating exactly how long you should play? When I was a kid, I was playing the arcade game. So, you are putting your coins into it. And then you say, it is the first time I'm playing. Oh, shit, I'm dying, after 1 minute. I'm dying. I have to put back some coins. So it was very short. You could never see the end of this kind of games. Never. It was not built that way. It was built to give you like an impact right away. But right now, you can feel that the project was no passion. We are just here to please, let's say, investors or Excel sheets. Let's say Concord. What is this game? Where is it coming from? Because the Sony wanted to have its own Fortnite or something like that. Why don't you try to make a good game? I don't care if it is the Fortnite like or not. I don't care. Just make a game that you are proud that you like. Look, for example, Ubisoft they are releasing, and they are very well known for it. They are releasing game constantly with bugs and again and again and again. Why do you do that if you know that it will be detrimental to your brand? Oh, because we need to keep with the roadmap, and we need to release, let's say, for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. Fair enough. I accept this idea. But did you really have to make a game, or let's say like Vanilla, that you have to play for 200 hours with, with all the small quests and everything like this, like what we call the Phoenix quest? Can you bring me some flowers? Can you go to bring this egg to this guy or something like that? And this is the game that are not well controlled. They are just like creating a list. And I was working for some companies, I don't want to name them, they will recognize themselves. That was the way that they were doing games. Okay, how many quests did we have before in the previous opus? Oh, we had 50. Okay, let's make 60. So we can say that there is more than the previous one. You are not trying to do what is correct. It's exactly the same way as you are saying, okay, I'm making a football game. Okay, how many balls do we have in this football game? 1. That's kind of normal. Okay, let's make 2. That's exactly what's happening. You are changing. You believe that more is better, and most of the time, the best game are something they are doing extremely well, and they are extremely controlled environment. Is it a big environment or not? It depends, I would say, on how veteran you are, how experienced you are, what is the fundamental of the team in terms of finance, in terms of scope. And that's why I was saying that most of the time producer can be very good because they know all that. So it makes them very strong. But to make a Witcher 3, to make a GTA 3, that means that there was a 2 and there was a 1 before. So stop dreaming about making Witcher 3. Stop dreaming about making GTA 3 or 5 or 6, whatever you like. Try to make number 1. That's the first thing first. And if you have less money, reduce the scope. Do what you want, but reduce the scope as much as possible.
And get it out. Finish it.
And
Complete
get
it.
it out.
That's I think complete it and get it out. I think that's it's a big emphasis for me in my studio, which is get it out. Even if the game sucks, like this is literally something I just talked to my team literally this last week. I was like, guys, the goal is to get it out because we need to learn from this experience because, well, A, we've never done it. So we need to learn. I was like, even if the game sucks, we're going to learn how to make games. We're going to learn the process of getting it done from keeping true to the roadmap. The goal is to get the game completed. Obviously, all that is, and two, like we're not trying to make a bad game. We're trying to make a good game. But there is a chance that it could suck. There is a chance that no one's going to like it. But we're trying to reduce that, obviously, during development. But the goal is to complete it and say we've completed it and learn from the completion of that experience. So then the next game that we can make, we can take those failures or those things that we learned, improve the process and make a better game and continue to move forward. Because I think, there's that statistic on Steam. Most indie devs or just devs in general make one game and then that's it. They make one game, they put it out there and they never go back to make another game. And then they also spent 3, 4, 5 years making that one game and it completely flopped and it destroys them. It devastates them. And I'm like, this is especially in the indie space. I mean, this is a shots on goal type of game, not a perfect shot on goal. You know what I mean? Because there's always, in my opinion, there's a goalie there. So it's like, you never know what's going to happen. You could maybe miss the goal. Like there's no such thing as a perfect shot. There's just keep shooting, and get a little bit better every single time.
We should always do. It's like there is no need to talk. We should always do. And if you are proud of what you have built, that's already good enough. That's already good enough because if you like it, that's the first sign that your game can succeed. You need to like it yourself. You need to be proud of what you have built. And it's not a matter of design. It's not a matter of art. It's not a matter of engineering. You can create fantastic things. There is a game on Steam. I just want to be sure about the title because I think, yeah, exactly. I was correct. There is really a game that I like. Maybe you have played it. It's called the Stanley Parable.
Oh yeah, I had. There's an older one, but yeah.
And this game was very unique. So what does it mean? It was very limited in scope. Yes, it was very limited in terms of graphics, but good enough to enjoy. And you could make the gameplay like, let's say, 20 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that. But you wanted to repeat again and again to discover, all the Easter eggs and everything like that. And that's a game that has a different kind of design. But what it was very strong is that they were limited by their capacity. And what they have done is based on their capacity. It doesn't need to be the most beautiful, engaging game to be a good game. On contrario, it's not because you are saying the idea is absolutely extraordinary that it prevents you to make something that looks good. If you can do it, do it. Of course. It's never what will create the success or not. For me, creating game is adding this kind of alchemy between engineering plus the game design, the idea. as I would put the idea within the game design. This is all the mechanics of gameplay that will make something that is relevant. But to achieve that, you need to not be delusional. You need to look at yourself. You need to understand what are the foundation of structuring a company. And also another subject that we didn't discuss is about the capacity to scale a company.
It was actually my next question.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
let's dig
Good.
into it. And that's the thing about like, it was really just a blunt question, is just like, when you look at an indie, because right now I think a lot of my audience generally, and also what I'm an indie as well, but there's a lot of momentum within the indie space as well. But when scaling, what does that look like? How do you scale? And what is it like? Let's say I published my first game. We have some revenue from that first game. Where do I go from here? Do I make a bigger game? Do I add more people to the pot? How do I scale that actually is going to effectively grow my company and not kill my company?
Scale is understanding that a company is completely different the way it operates when you are, let's say, 5, 10, 20, 30, and then when you are 150, for example, or 1,000 people. That's completely different. And maybe you do not need to have the right people around you. And maybe you have even, that's more extreme, you have, if it's really growing, you have to remove yourself from the equation. Maybe you are not good for your own company, and maybe you need someone who is the best to manage your company. You know, when you have a small structure, everyone has the feeling that you can create a studio by instinct. This is what is the problem. But it can be true if you have money. But if you have limited amount of money, then in that case, you have to enter it into managing your runway, the teams, the salaries, the scaling the teams based on the roadmap. Closer you come to the release of the game, bigger should be the team. Then you have all the QA, the extra, all the outsourcing that you can do. That's for sure. You have to consider the marketing and what is the impact of the marketing on the budget. Is it 10%? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Or is it 100%? Which is not something extraordinary. You can have as much marketing as just having the development of the game. But if you want to have a bigger company or a bigger studio, that means that you want to manage a company. If you manage a company, it will be always based on architecture of the teams, architecture of the department, the division, the processes, and the task, and the OKR, the KPIs for each of the person, the individuals. That's completely different. And when you are a company, I know that what I will say will shock people, and they really do not like it, because there is a little bit there is always this sense of dismissal about the game. But when you release a game as a company, you need to understand that you are releasing a product. I'm sorry to say, but yes, for many people, game is an art, but it's the conjunction of art and product at the same time. And people do not want to look at that. I'm releasing my game. It's a masterpiece. It's an art. It's an art form. Yes, it's an art form, but you are releasing a product. There is a price attached to it. That's something that is very unique. And I can see video upload stalled right now. When you are scaling this, you can see that a lot on my LinkedIn post. I'm usually talking about the signs that you can see that you are scaling, but you do not understand what's happening in your own company. That's a sign that you are scaling and you are starting to lose control. For example, you have the belief as owner of the company, as a founder, that your team is not executing what you want. You send some request, or you ask people to deliver this or that, but it's not moving at the same speed as before. That's usually the one of the issue. Or you have some communication issue. You are communicating to people, but then after it's not coming back. There is no impact on what you are saying, or what the delivery doesn't correspond to what you were asking. And at that time, what is important is to sit with the CEO and to look at the system that has been built. And there is this book that is much more for the manager, that is called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And I think that if you consider that this is based for the managers, that means that you need to raise your own level. That's exactly the same for the company. It's exactly the same for the company. That companies need to create structure and systems that will protect them. That's something that will be very important. So one of the questions, is why do you want to scale? What are you trying to prove? You can have a team that is always 20 people and doing pretty good games. Not. So what is the point of scaling? Is to make something that has more impact, that can imagine, or a game that will sell more. Okay, but does it mean that this game has to be bigger to be a bigger success? Or do you need to have bigger and better marketing? Because there are different ways to look at it, right? Is the first time that you release your game, was there enough marketing? Are you considering about marketing? You have so many developers right now. They are not releasing their game and they are dying. On the other side, you have the developers, they have their games, but then after they are finding some publishers. So now you have new publishers we are receiving. I was discussing with one of them. They are receiving more than 4,000 requests a year. 4,000. So that means that they receive more than 10 a day. You remove the weekends and everything. Maybe this is 20 per day. And they want to select 3 per year. So 3 or 4 out of 4,000. You have one chance out of 1,000. So that's very complicated right now. And if you count on that, you need to understand your business model from scratch. Are you releasing the game by yourself, or are you searching a publisher? If you are releasing by yourself, have you consider all the situation, the size of the team, let's say if the game is becoming late, if the roadmap is lagging, and instead of being released December, it will be released in June the following year, these kind of things like that. Do you consider all these elements? What is your runway? Can you decrease it? What would you do? Where would you put your money? That's the thing. Because the people who can get publisher is becoming more and more difficult right now. There are too many games, too many people. And it's getting worse and worse, because now you have AI that can help. That's one. But you had also, since post-COVID, you had so many people who lost their job. And it is just the beginning, my friend. And so many people lost their jobs. So now the X from all these big companies, they are creating small studios by themselves. And they say, okay, let's do our game. But they didn't understand that they are not playing with the same rules. There is not the magic pocket of, the well-furnished magical finance pockets of EA or Take-Two or Ubisoft or Tencent or whoever. So now you are on your own, and that's a completely different game.
What is some of the, like, when you work with possibly first-time founders, what is some of the like hard truths that they just don't want to hear? Like, you go in and you're just like, I mean, we've kind of touched on some of them, but like, what's kind of the main theme when you talk to some of these founders? And then we'll possibly get close to wrapping up, but just curious, like, what does that look like? You meet a founder and first-time founder, and you're like, look, here's the reality, and they just do not want to hear it.
You have different one. One is, you can say that to the guy that the version of you that build the company is not the version that is required to scale it. So that means that maybe you are not the best guy to do it. And that's something, why that is, because in the early stage, the founder, most of the time, wins because of speed, because of instinct. I was telling you up to 20 or 30 people, you can do it by instinct. And EA is doing his own personal control, right? So he's taking care of all the key decision. He has the feeling of everything, but more the team is growing. And then I will say that this guy is becoming the bottleneck. He's the one who is stopping the company to operate the right way. If the decision depends on your intuition, and if all the decisions depend on your presence, if people are always waiting for your final word or final wording, then you do not have a scalable system. It's just you have a startup that is centered around one person, and this you cannot scale. It's not an architecture. It's not a system. So when you ask people to design or to redesign a company to be scaled, of course, again, we come back to the maturity. You need to work with the founder and the CEO, and you need to ask him to redesign himself. To be able to redesign the company, you need to redesign the CEO in some ways, or the founders, the guy who started the company. Because probably this guy at the beginning was doing everything and he still wants to control everything, and he's falling into the micromanagement trap, and everything is going through him because this is what he was doing until now. And now the company is bigger and he doesn't understand why he's losing track of what is happening, or why people are not doing what he's asking for, all these kind of things. And that's typical of the guy who is trying to decide everything, but everyone is expecting on him. And then after he's saying to his team, usually there is the irony of it is, why don't I'm paying you guys to do something? Why don't you do it? And everyone knows internally that everyone is waiting for this guy to take the decision because he's always the guy who is taking the decision. And that's I will say that's one of the truths. The second truth, I think, is about the structural reality, is that the growth is not showing your strengths, it's not amplifying your strengths, it amplifies your weaknesses. That's the reality of it. And if you double, for example, the size of your team, you do not, it doesn't mean that you will double the output of your team. It also means that you will double the ambiguity. You will double the communication path. That kind of things. You will double the chance to be misaligned. That's one of the realities. So all the small tracks will appear much faster, and it will be much more difficult to manage with a 100 people team compared to a 20 people team, because who has the ownership of this task? Who is in charge? That's one of the reality. The third one I would say is the control illusion. Is that if you want to scale, you need to give up the control. And when you give up the control, you need to give it up earlier than you feel comfortable with. Do not wait to have all the problem and all the issues to say, I'm not good. And that's why I'm saying that myself, my job is to be like a trusted advisor, trying to look at yourself. Almost a kind of a mentorship in a way. You need to understand that you cannot be the best at everything. And all the founders, again, because of the micromanagement, also, they always say one thing, but do the opposite. They say that they want to delegate, for example, but what they want in what they really want is input without losing authority. So this is what they want. They still want to control. So if all the big decisions come back to you, that means that the organization cannot mature. So scaling means that you accept that some decisions are made differently than what you would have done yourself, even that you would consider are not made as good as you would have done by yourself. And this is much more based on emotion that you just let go. That's very important.
I wrote a lot of things down.
I will recommend you to listen to your own podcast.
Yeah. Go. I definitely. And I want to take a moment if there was, because we're really we're creeping up on time now, but I want to take a moment if there was anything like very specific that you wanted to talk about. Let's take that moment and like dig into like just what anything, like basically if I forgot anything, I want to take a moment to dig into anything specific you wanted to really address, and then maybe we'll do a little bit of an outro and then close it up from there. Is that all right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if there is a one thing in particular, but what I would say to people who are creating videos, managing teams, and trying to build a company is that you need to be extremely strong in putting into place your values. And you need to be aligned with your values. That's extremely important. For years and years and years, we were discussing about crunch. People literally dying to make a game to be released or something like that. But if your company only works because the best people are completely exhausted, they are completely dying over their work, and you believe that you are a high performer, that's not the case. I'm sorry to say, but in that case, this is just a structural debt that you are building game one after another. And it doesn't make you a good manager. On contrary, it just makes you a bad manager who has the feeling that he can accomplish something, that his jobs, this kind of way by forcing his way to other people. And you can do it for a while, but then after the system will fail, people will leave eventually. They will build their own thing or they will go to a better place. So I want people to understand that you are, for most of the people who are in this, you are not a great manager. You may believe you are a great manager, but you are not a great manager. And it's not because you are buying for your office the Switch 2, so people can do some kind of Mario Kart tournament during, the breaks and during lunchtime or something like that. It doesn't make you a good manager. It doesn't make you a great manager. Not because you have a foosball or because you are offering, I don't know, the breakfast, that you are a great manager. You're not. Take care of your team, then your team will take care of your game. And management is about taking care of people. You need to show some empathy to understand people. But instead of saying, oh, guys, why I'm saying that, because I've seen it by myself, of course. It's like, yeah, I watch like a new game so we can play during lunchtime. Yeah, cool. But do not forget to pay your team well. Do not forget to respect your team because they are people. Do not forget that they are just not tools. If you want to work with tools, use AI or use software or SaaS or whatever. If you work with people, you work with people, not against people. And you are not a great manager. It's basically progressively you will become a great manager who's failing and doing it again. As a consultant or an advisor is someone who can speed you up to success. This is what it is. It's a kind of an accelerator, like a constant training session. This is what it is. but you have the responsibility of your team. Don't believe that you are such a great guy, that you are a great manager, a great engineer, a great artist, a great game designer. You are, you have the vision, you have everything, and that's not true. That's not true. You need to be well surrounded. You need to have a strong team around you, and take care of your team, and your team will take care of your game. This is what I would like people to understand. And that's something that is so important. Something that is so important. And when you betray your team, you will never be able to make a great game.
I agree. Man, like I said, this is one of those subjects that so many founders, especially, is so specific in this industry. People completely overlook the business side of it, and how much growth on the business side and maturity is the best, I think, is the best word to call it. It's maturity, to look at what you're trying to do and say, how do I make sure this is successful? How do I make sure I take care of my team? And how do I make sure I don't cheat my investors? I guess is the best way to put it, you know? But let's do a little bit of an outro. Let's give everyone kind of the insight on where they can find you if they're looking for something. They're like, you know, somebody's watching and they're like, man, I need some help. I need to figure out how to actually make this business work. Not so much the game side, but how do I make this fundamentally work? Give a little bit of an outro, who you are, how to find you, and how to contact you.
Very easy. So I have two websites. One is called aceconsultinggroup.biz, which is definitely about the game industry. But I have also another website, which is with my last name, Gresoviac, GRESOVIAC.com, where people can find me if they want to work with me as a trusted advisor. This is much longer term. Very easily also, of course, people can find me on LinkedIn. They can DM me without any problem. And we can discuss about their current situation. I think that for all the founders and all the CEOs and people running studios, they need to understand that they don't know what they don't know. Well, this is this sense of maturity. And what I like to do, podcasts like yours or interviews, is because I want to bring as much experience that I have to other people. I want to be able to bring something, kind of knowledge or experience to the industry, to the market. So people can say, yes, this, I have to be careful. Here, there is a weak spot for me. So I have to either I have to double down, or I have to remove this weakness, or I have to become a better person. And becoming a better person is to become a better manager. Becoming a better manager makes you a better leader. Being a better leader makes you pave the way for success. And for me, yes, people can always contact me on LinkedIn, and they can always contact me on through my website. They can check. They can have access to my calendar through my LinkedIn. So no problem.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be on here. And I really hope that people find value in this conversation and find where their weaknesses and find where they can improve, and reach out to you to see if they can get some help along the way. But I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, because I think it's an extremely, extremely important conversation to be had.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jeffrey. That was so great to discuss with you, and maybe another podcast we'll do about comic books.
Yes.
Who knows?
Oh man, absolutely.
It's also a beloved industry that we would like to save also.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Take care.